Welcome everybody to another walkthrough for Hack the Box Business CTF 2023. This is for Desynth. This is actually going to be a walkthrough on an unintended solution. The intended solution was using a client-side desync in Workers or WorkSug, however you say that. I actually did not get this one to work, but I actually got the other one to work, and it was actually really interesting. After the CTF, somebody mentioned that they were able to get a SQL injection style authentication to work. And I had run SQL map and some other stuff just to try to see if I could get it to work. But if you look at the code, um, here is our login. So we have our /login, and it's basically just checking, hey, is the request JSON? So is it valid JSON? If not, it's going to give you 400. It then grabs the JSON, packs it into data, and then it's using a .get on your username and password. And if there's not a username or not a password, it's going to give you 401. Else, it will go ahead and just do that login user DB. And if we look here, it's taking those parameters. It doesn't sanitize it at all. It's just using a like format string style query, and it's dropping that into a select. So I was curious if we could do some type of SQL injection. It didn't seem like I could, but after somebody mentioned it, it actually seemed possible. So let me go ahead and get this. I should have started the container already, but we'll go ahead and spin it up. And so I'm building it from scratch. One thing to note is this is actually not a SQL injection. So it is actually a type confusion attack that's occurring. And it really depends on what random password gets assigned to the admin user. Because sometimes it'll work, sometimes it won't. And I will go into explaining how that works. So first I'm going to go ahead and try. So we'll go to localhost 1337 login, and I'm just going to do test because it doesn't really matter. I'm going to start my intercept, and so you can see that we're passing in JSON, and that's exactly what we saw in the code. And so what somebody recommended in the write-up section was, hey, go ahead and pass in false inside brackets. And so you're passing in like a array object, or if you're familiar with Python, a dictionary object, a list, into this dictionary JSON, and that's how it's getting parsed into Python. So really we're just passing an array of false in, and this sometimes works and it sometimes doesn't. And so I'm actually going to send it over to repeater so we can see it. Yeah, so here we're getting invalid credentials. So the first time I tried this, it worked just great. There was no issues whatsoever. Now I will go ahead and, well, actually here, let me register a user, and you can see, I'm going to go ahead and turn the intercept off. Invalid credentials, let's go ahead and register. It was successful, and I'm going to log in, and that was successful. But if I go back to my repeater now, you'll notice that if I send this, I'm logged in successfully. So what's happening here is it's able to confuse the back end, and I'll show you exactly how it's doing that here in a second. You can see our login got a 200. So what we want to do is we actually want to go into the Docker container here. We'll do a Docker exec. There we go. So IT is for interactive terminal, user root. It's already running as root, so I didn't really need that, but then I'm specifying the container and then the command I want to pass, which is just bin bash, because I want to get to the bash. So now the next portion of this is I want to be able to get the logs. So we'll do MySQL root, and what's nice is they didn't set a password for root. It was another user that they used, so we can just log in. But we can go ahead and we want to set global general log to on. And I don't know if it's going to be specific, but that should work. And now the next thing we can do is we can go ahead and figure out where our logging should be. if I can type right. Show variables like, again, if I can type right. I'll log files. File, not files. There we go. So we're going to look for this, and I already know the path. But just so you guys can find this on your own, you do name, and then you can pass that in. And there we go. So var lib MySQL. So we can go ahead and just take a look. It shouldn't really have too much in there because we haven't actually run any commands since we enabled it. Yeah, so it just shows that we turned it on. So now we can go ahead and go back and let's see exactly what gets... Okay, so we just ran that. Let's see what actually occurred there. So you can see our false is actually getting translated to this parentheses 0. So if you're familiar with Python and the way that it handles Boolean, is you can say Boolean false is equal to 0, Boolean true is equal to 1. So that's what it's doing, is it's converting that false into a 0. And you can also do the same. I think it was iCurl, IKERL was the user that had kind of brought this up. But you can actually even just pass in 0. So it's really like the false doesn't really do anything. It might help if there was some type of like sanitization. But yeah, we can do that. And if we come back here and we cat our log again, you can see that again, it's just doing that 0. And we can also, I think the brackets are important, because if we try to do a 0 here, it's going to give us invalid JSON because of the way that Boolean operator works. It's checking, hey, if it has this username, but when the username is 0, it doesn't have an object. But when you have a list with a 0, it's saying, hey, there's something there. So anyways, so that's how that works. So the question is, how is it working for authenticating my user but not the admin? And so we'll want to actually we need to go back into MySQL. So go back in there, and this is going to be a little bit longer because of the explanation. Use web recruit. Got a little backwards there. Desynth recruit. Show. Let's do a select. And we don't really care about everything. All we care about is username, password from users. So we have 3 users in here right now. And the first thing you can see is here's that one that I added, the test. And I was trying for the longest time to figure out what this actually, like, how this was working. Why was it like, okay, this password is somehow set to 0. Like, that's how it's equating. And I found this interesting article. It's on ExploitDB. It's by Osanda, and I'm not sure how to say the last name, so I don't want to butcher it. But it's out there. I highly recommend. It's actually a very interesting read. It's more about like SQL injection and some of the other components that you can do with this. But this really kind of explains like how SQL or MySQL particularly handles strings. And it's he goes and it's like select this string equal to 0, and it returns 1, which would be true. And it turns out that it's actually handling the string as like a double. So it's very interesting. I was trying to figure out, okay, well, why is it handling some strings? Because this should still technically be a string. But why is it handling some strings as a 0 and some are not? And so I found another SQL query that basically casts the, we have to cast that string as an integer, as a signed integer, be specific. So we'll do a select, cast, copying that in. And it really doesn't matter what's there, but there we go. And so what you can see is it's actually processing this string from the beginning. And so it's saying, hey, any digits that I see from the beginning, I'm going to return that. So 6551. So we can take this now, go back here, and say we want to log in as our admin. And let's actually do it this way. Let's go ahead, we'll log out, go to our mercenary portal. Let's go ahead and turn on our intercept. We'll do admin, blah, and we're going to change this here. We're going to say, hey, let's set our, and we can actually compare our password here, I think, without doing the quotes. So you could brute force this. You only need 6,551 tries. Significantly less than the actual password itself, which is important to note. But if we forward this, you'll see we get sent to settings. So we get a successful login. We can turn intercept off now. And you can see that we are the admin. We are verified. And we have IPC submissions. And we can download stuff. So that is the way to do the unintended solution. There is also the way to get the rest of the challenge complete. Is using the API. You have to gather files. So there's several files in particular because we're working with Workzug. We need to access the console to get remote access. So the console is locked. You need a pin, and so in order to be able to solve this pin, you need to actually there's a hack tricks Flask debug. I think this is the right one. So in order to be able to solve it, there's a bunch of information. I highly recommend looking at this. It basically shows you how to reconstruct it. I basically took this, turned this into a function so that I could just call it and collect all the files programmatically. But it'll return the pin that we can use to log in. You'll also notice that when we started up our Flask that we got it right here. So 405636160. So if we copy that, say I got that from my code, and plug that in, and so we'd get here. And then we can do something like import os dot what's dir, I think it is. And we can go our root directory, expand this out. And this is why you'd have to get remote code execution, because you need to figure out, we're not sure what this random flag file is going to be. And then we can just open that up and get the flag. But yeah, that's how you solve it. So this is a pretty interesting type confusion type of attack. I will have write up in the video notes. You can look at it and get some more information. And then I'm pretty sure that the files for this challenge are out there, so you can go ahead and try it yourself. If you have any questions or anything like that, feel free to reach out. All right, have a great day.